You know, Luke 2 has the record of the shepherds out in their fields at night when the angels appeared and told them about the birth of the Messiah. It's an absolutely wonderful record. Luke chapter 2 verse 13 says, "Suddenly a great company of the heavenly host appeared." And I read this and I think, what in the world is the heavenly host? I mean, when I think of a host or hostess, I think about going into a restaurant and there's a nicely dressed lady there, or a nicely dressed gentleman, and they've got their arm out and they've got the towel over their arm and they're a host. And I'm thinking the heavenly host here, the heavenly host appeared. The word host is also used in the Old Testament in a lot of versions of the Bible. What does it mean, the heavenly host? Well, personally, I think it's a bad translation. Both in Greek and in Hebrew, the word means army. And when you think about it, this is God's angel army. 1/3 of the angels fell and are now in an army headed up by the devil fighting against God. And 2/3 of the angels stayed faithful to God. And what have they done for the last 4,000 years? They've fought evil. For the last 4,000 years, since Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, they have fought against evil. Absolutely. And now, the Messiah is born. The one whom God said will get rid of the evil, finally, put an end to the war. Think about soldiers in combat and how much it means to them when the war is over, when there's no more fighting, no more dying, no more sleeping in mud holes at night, no more eating MREs meal after meal. The war is over. You get to go home. You get to be with your family. Things get to be right again. Every soldier longs for that day. Every godly soldier anyway. And do you think the angels wouldn't feel great about that? The birth of the Messiah who's going to put an end to evil? Absolutely. They've been in the trenches for 4,000 years. And I can just kind of imagine, here's God, and he's like, hey, Mary's going to give birth to the Messiah here. Anybody want to go down and help announce the event? And he looks around, millions of angel hands up in the air. Oh, okay, fine. Well, no wonder it says, suddenly a great company of the heavenly army appeared with the angel praising God. And up a few verses before that, in verse 9, it says, the angel of the Lord appeared, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them. The glory of the Lord, this great, huge light. So you can kind of get the picture here. The shepherds are out on the fields at night, and they're watching their flocks. And it's not December of the year. It's probably September of the year. That's December 25th date for Christmas is not accurate. Probably in September. And that's one of the reasons that the sheep wouldn't be in sheepfolds, but would be out in the pastures, very nice and comfortable in a September in Palestine, in Israel. So the shepherds are out and it's dark, nighttime. And you think about, what's the brightest thing these shepherds had ever seen? I mean, think about it. What would be the brightest thing that they've ever seen? Oh, probably a bonfire. Oh, you've probably been to a bonfire. I've been to a bonfire. There's some brightness there, but they're not that bright. Frankly, I mean, one good old mercury vapor light in a parking lot, lights up that whole parking lot. Just that one little light is brighter than a bonfire. And here are the shepherds, and all of a sudden, the glory of the Lord shines round about them. They've never seen a light like this at night. And then within a few minutes after that, then the angel appears, talks to them. Then the great company of the heavenly army appears. And the heavenly army, by the way, they would appear like angels always appeared in the Bible. They aren't floating around in the air. They're standing around the hillsides around Bethlehem. The night becomes light. The hillsides are covered with the heavenly army. No wonder those angels were frightened. And the angel had to say, don't be afraid. Sure. And what is the chorus of these angels? They say, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to men on whom his favor rests. And that's an important statement. And it's different than if you're reading the older versions like the King James Version from 1611, which reads this way: "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." So did the angels say goodwill toward men, like everybody? Or did they say peace to men of God's goodwill? Or as it would say in the NIV, peace to men on whom his favor rests. And this has been debated and debated through the centuries. What's the problem? The problem was that as the Greek text was being copied and recopied and copied and recopied through the centuries, in some of the versions, the last word in the verse got copied in the nominative case, the case of a noun. And in some copies, it got copied as a genitive case. And so, to make a long story short, in the last 50 years or so, as we've been able to use computer modeling to understand the transmission of the text, and we've been able to uncover more and more Greek texts, and even some things from the Dead Sea Scrolls that threw light on that. The Dead Sea Scrolls were, I believe, 1947. Now the debate is pretty closed. Every competent scholar I'm aware of understands that the genitive text is correct. The genitive case is correct, which is why the newer versions, like the New American Standard, New Revised Standard Version, English Standard Version, New International Version, all say peace on men, peace to men or people, peace to people, if you will, on whom his favor rests. And this is really, really true. If you go back and you study the Bible through the centuries, all through the Old Testament, the Messiah was going to come and he was going to bless those people who had obeyed God, and he was going to deal justice to those people who hadn't. I think, for example, if we go back to Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, when John the Baptist is speaking, and here's what he says. John the Baptist says of the Messiah, "His winnowing fork is in his hand, and he will clear his threshing floor, gathering his wheat into the barn, and burning up the chaff with unquenchable fire." So it was very clear that when the Messiah came, he was going to make a distinction between those people who would obey God, who were going to be blessed, and the people who had been disobedient and rebellious, who he would deal with. So the verse is actually reading, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to men on whom his favor rests." And I guess the last thing we need to ask ourselves is, what does it mean, glory to God in the highest? And the answer is, it's referring to the highest rank or the highest position. It's not very clear, granted, glory to God in the highest. But if you fill in the blanks and understand what it's saying here, it's glory to God in the highest ranks, in the highest positions. And in the ancient world, if those people and angelic powers, spiritual powers in the highest places were giving glory to God, then everybody else underneath them would be giving glory to God too. That's just the way that the culture went. And so the angels come out and they say, "Glory to God in the highest places, among the highest ranks, the highest ranking angelic beings and people are giving glory to God, and peace to men on whom his favor rests." And now you and I know what the angels said, and what we need to do is be those people who are obedient to God. Peace from God has been promised to those people who will obey God, who will follow his ways. The angels announced that at the birth of Christ. Let's you and I be among the people who have God's favor by being obedient to him and loving him and giving to him all our heart, soul, mind, and strength.